where you scream to watch that, watch this, and I'll dive down through this hairy flesh.
Oh, hello. You've caught me having a hot toddy. It's the first day of winter here in Sydney, June 1st, and that means I'm planning my Sydney Film Festival. You should too. Now, if you don't live in Sydney, don't worry. A lot of these films are either currently screening or will be screening around the world, that is in your neck of the woods, sometime in the coming months. So follow along. I've got 10 suggestions for you. And if you are going to the Sydney Film Festival, you should book some of these. I'm going to all of these, but I'm not going to tell you the sessions I'm going to because of the stalker incident last year. We won't talk about that. Now, the way I recommend you book your tickets for the Sydney Film Festival is rather than go to their website, which you can do, I recommend their app. This year their app is really good. They've improved it over the years, and for the first time their app is really solid. In fact, it's better than their website. So get out your iPad or your phone and find the Sydney Film Festival app. It's a very easy way to book. Now, also, one thing you should know, I haven't seen any of these films yet, and some of them I know a lot about, and some of them I know a little about. So I'll be informed on some, less informed on others, but I guarantee that all of these should be good choices because I have scoured the selection offered this year, and these are my 10 picks. I've tried also to pick films that are on at the State Theatre. The State Theatre is the big 2,000-seat beautiful theatre in the heart of Sydney's CBD, and that's the best experience for the Sydney Film Festival because it's the grandeur of this beautiful place, and it's where the Sydney Film Festival really shines. The first film I'm going to recommend is The Niall Hilton Incident. This is a police procedural set during the Arab Spring. I don't know too much more about it. I'm not particularly familiar with the director's work, but I just thought the idea of a police procedural set during the Arab Spring sounds very exciting, and I've heard it's pretty great. It's won some awards overseas, etc. As I say, I don't know a lot more about it, but I'm going to check it out. I also can't say I know a lot about my second choice, which is called The Untamed. It's also playing at the State Theatre, as is The Niall Hilton Incident. I do know, however, that its director won the Venice Silver Lion for Best Director for this film, and that his previous film, Hele, was an intense, violent look at the drugs in Mexico. So I'm very excited to see this. I'm told that it is an erotic sci-fi. I'm all down for that. It's only 98 minutes too, and when you're seeing a lot of the films at the Sydney Film Festival, you want to pack in some shorter films, because if you're just seeing long film after long film, and sometimes I'll see 3 films in a day, it can get a bit much. Make sure you always have a hot toddy. The next film I do know a lot more about. It's the feature-length documentary Risk from Laura Poitras. Her last documentary was Citizen4, and it was astonishing. It was about Edward Snowden, and it captured him in real time as, sitting in his hotel room in Hong Kong, he dumped his information to the world. So you were seeing CNN reporting that this new information had been dumped and wondering where Edward Snowden was, or who in fact was even dumping the information, and you were sitting in Edward Snowden's room as he was dumping it. It was incredible. It was this sort of thriller in real time that was also about the most amazing stuff that had happened in America for years. I mean, it was just incredible. Absolutely the best feature documentary of its year, one of the best films of its year, and she's followed it up with now a documentary about the grandfather of all major internet leaks, Julian Assange himself. It's called Risk. I'm told this film is no less astonishing than Citizen4. First time a look at Julian Assange on an intimate, up-close level, the camera on him. She herself has said she is astounded by how much he allowed her to film him. And I'm told in the film he addresses the charges in Sweden against him, the Hillary Clinton campaign, all sorts of stuff. She showed it in Cannes last year. She's added new stuff to it, so she's updated it. I can't wait to see this film, Risk, Laura Poitras' new film about Julian Assange. I would book that one now. Happy End is the new film from Michael Haneke. If you know anything about European cinema, you know Michael Haneke. Perhaps your favorite film of his is Caché, also known as Hidden. Or maybe it's Funny Games. Or maybe it's Funny Games, his American remake. And if you've ever seen his American remake of Funny Games, you'll realize that he's playing Funny Games with you, because he's basically done a shot-for-shot remake of his own film and made it look so similar that you wonder what the point was, which was maybe his point. Maybe your favorite one of his films is The White Ribbon, or maybe it's L'Amour or Amour, the film about, the old lady dying that was really up against Argo for Best Picture a few years ago. Maybe it's one of his earlier ones. Anyway, he is a fantastic filmmaker. He's one of the great makers of thrillers in the modern era. He's also got one of the best senses of dark black comedy of any director working today. He's Austrian. His new film is called Happy End, and it's got a great cast. It's got Isabelle Huppert, Jean-Louis Trintignant, who I think is kind of maybe repeating his role from Amour, and it's got Matthew Kosovitz. So I'm very excited for Michael Haneke's new film, Happy End. That's also screening at the State Theatre. I'm very excited for The Other Side of Hope, because I haven't seen too many films by Aki Kaurismäki, and yet he is easily Finland's most famous and most prominent director. So finally, I'm getting to see one of his films, The Other Side of Hope, and I'm told it's very, very good. I gather he specializes in intriguing comedy with a bit of a social message. This one's about a refugee who arrives in Finland and how people deal with him. I don't know too much more about it, but I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'm very excited for I Am Not Your Negro, which I do know a fair amount about. This is the new film from Raul Peck, who's a Cuban filmmaker who lives in the United States, and he's made this documentary, which was nominated for the Best Feature-Length Documentary at the Oscars earlier this year, about the writings of James Baldwin. James Baldwin is the now deceased, very prominent African-American writer who wrote all sorts of things. He wrote essays and books and poems and lots, nonfiction. And I gather that this film is composed entirely, at least in the oral sense, of quoted words from his works, all read and interpreted by Samuel L. Jackson. I've heard this is an incredibly moving film and one of the greatest films ever made about the civil rights struggle in the United States. I'm very excited for I Am Not Your Negro. I don't know too much about the Romanian film Graduation, except that it's already released in certain countries around the world to great acclaim. And that is why I am very excited to be seeing it at the State Theatre this year as part of the Sydney Film Festival. I won't be telling you which session I'm going to because of that stalker thing from last year. We won't talk about that. Anyway, I'm told it's a bit of a social thriller. It's ostensibly about a father trying to help his daughter, I guess, get into a good university by getting good grades or doing well on her exam or something, and in doing so, finding himself enmeshed in corruption within Romania, because everything is done there by a bit of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. I like films like that. I like a bit of corruption. I love films set in Eastern Europe. I'm told this is very, very, very good. Romanian director Cristian Mungiu won the Best Director prize at Cannes in 2016 for this, so you should check it out. It's called Graduation. I love political documentaries, particularly political behind-the-scenes documentaries. There have been so many great ones, such as The War Room, and recently Weiner, for example, about Anthony Weiner. Check that out if you haven't. So there's one called Pac-Men that I'm very excited to be checking out at the Sydney Film Festival. It's directed by an Australian, Luke Walker, but it's an American film. It's about the American race for the Republican primary party, but not focusing on Donald Trump, focusing on Ben Carson. Now, Ben Carson, if you remember, was the black candidate for the Republican nominee for President of the United States, who ran in that very, very, very crowded field, the field that Trump eventually won before then winning the presidency. And Ben Carson was the surgeon who ran for president, or ran at least for the Republican nominee. And I understand his campaign was bonkers, and everyone was like, well, Trump's obviously not going to win, so we'll focus on this guy for the bonkers story. And obviously, what I think will be funny as well about just everything about how weird this will be is also how you'll have this sort of offsider over here being Trump. So I think this will be a film that is fantastic and informative and interesting and unique and probably quite funny and tragic, funnily tragic, but also will be even richer by what we know now, because there'll be this sort of other figure, Trump, that we know what happens to bloody Trump. So that's Pac-Man. I'm very much looking forward to that, a feature-length documentary. And only 83 minutes. You can kind of slide it into your schedule. The Beguiled is the new film from Sofia Coppola, and she just won Best Director at Cannes for it. It's a remake of Don Siegel's film with Clint Eastwood. The original film is bonkers. It's really nuts. It's absurd. It's crazy. It's quite wonderful. In the original, Clint Eastwood played this Confederate soldier, I believe, during the Civil War, the United States Civil War, who's wounded, and he gets tended to in this sort of boarding school or boarding house. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've seen it, for women in the American South. And of course, there's a lot of sexual tension and weird things happen. It was a sort of gothic horror. So well suited to the kind of work Sofia Coppola does. She's remade it with an all-star cast. Colin Farrell plays the Clint Eastwood role, but of course what's really interesting is the female roles that she's stocked it up with. Nicole Kidman, Kirsten Dunst, and Elle Fanning are the three big names in the ensemble of women. I'm a little nervous because I like the original so much, and I'm worried that seeing the remake, I'll just kind of go, why? On the other hand, Sofia Coppola did just win Best Director at Cannes for this film, so look, I'll check it out. I think it's in competition this year. Yeah, the Sydney Film Festival has a competition, so many of these films that I'm seeing are in that competition. It's playing at the State Theatre. It's only 91 minutes, The Beguiled. The final film I'm going to let you know about this year is a restoration. Now, the Sydney Film Festival obviously shows a lot of world premieres and Australian premieres, and part of the reason you go see a film at a film festival is because you might not get to see that film in a normal theatrical release, or you're seeing that film months and months and months before it gets a theatrical release. Indeed, many films only get bought at the festival for local distribution based on their performance and acceptance at the festival. However, the Sydney Film Festival has always run a restoration series as well, films that have been restored in new prints, new sound, etc., so we can see forgotten gems from the past. And this year, the one I've chosen is Derek Jarman's film Jubilee. I've never seen it. I'm really looking forward to seeing it projected in a restored print. I think it's from 1978, and it's about punks. It's about punks in London, and I guess Jarman takes the character of Queen Elizabeth I and puts her amongst punks in the late 1970s London. This is the thing for me. I lived in London in the late 1970s. I was a little boy, and I was walking around London with my mum and my dad and going, who are all these people? Because I was seeing all these punks, and they were like, those are the punks. So I have these very, very vivid memories of the punks, the birth of punks in what I consider the birthplace of punk, being London in the late 70s. And this film is about those punks. Maybe I'll even see me. Maybe I'll see little me walking around saying to his mum and dad, hey, who are these punks? Who's that guy over there with the camera? Oh, that's Derek Jarman. What's he doing? Making a film called Jubilee. I'll see that at the Sydney Film Festival in 2017. That's unlikely to be my experience of seeing this film, but I am very excited to see Jubilee, which is one of the first punk movies, and I gather it's still got a very raw, gritty punk aesthetic. That is Jubilee. I'll be seeing that at the Dendy Newtown, one of the other venues of the Sydney Film Festival this year. So, Those are my 10 picks for the Sydney Film Festival of 2017. As I say, the best way to buy your tickets is to get the app. The app is very user-friendly this year. See you at the festival, but not if you're my stalker. We won't talk about that. Bye.
Watch that, watch this, and I'll die.